We're going to do dual and we're going to use circle.
Welcome to TransParents. We are live. My name is Amber. I'm your host, I guess. She, her. We're really co-hosts. I don't like saying host and you're co-host. I like saying we're just both co-hosts. So Amber,
Co-host.
she, her pronouns.
I am Jenny. My pronouns are also she, her.
Oh, and you know what I forgot? I forgot to put my I was going to put my symbol up there for TikTok tonight. Forgot to do it. Oops. We
For
can
those
get
of
it
you
in there.
joining us on TikTok or excuse me, on LinkedIn or YouTube, I am also, I've got my camera set up like this, facing the computer, because we are live on TikTok. And unfortunately, we've still got to get Amber to 1,000 followers in order to this, and that way she can just kind of be face to face on here, and we don't have to do this whole computer screen thing. But for now, that's what we got to do because she's not up to 1,000 followers yet. So if you're joining us on TikTok, please look at Moonchild77. That is my co-host right now, Amber. We are parents of young trans people, and we like to offer love, support. We like to break down myths and harmful rhetoric, talk about things like legislation and things that benefit the trans community, because we are supportive and loving mama bears. So please give her a follow so she can get up to 1,000. And I will let you take it away, Miss Amber. What are we talking about tonight?
Oh, tonight, trans grooming, unmasking the misconceptions. And actually, Jenny and I had not discussed this. Neither one of us thought of it last week, but today is Mother's Day.
It's Mother's Day.
And I can tell you that there is a lot of rhetoric around the fact that parents are grooming their children into making them trans. And
Yeah.
so without actually meaning to, we kind of landed on a great date for this particular topic. And there's also the rhetoric around the fact that trans people themselves are groomers, that they're pedophiles, that they're out to assault, grape, whatever you want to call it, other people. And that's absolutely false. And so we kind of wanted to take a few of these political talking points that we keep seeing and unpack them for you, because they do affect our children very, very much. The legislation that's out there, and the way that it's gaslit and fumed and fueled so that it does harm to that population.
Sure.
And this population are our children, and we don't want to see that. We don't want that for our friends and siblings that we consider within the trans community or within the gender diverse spectrum.
Right.
Everybody should be able to walk around without labels being placed on you that have no right to be there.
Especially
right?
ones as harmful as that. I mean, we recognize that grooming is something that happens, and it's a terrible, terrible thing. And, to label someone like me or Amber, who are just trying to love and support our children, to label people like our kids with that kind of label, it's not just a label. It's not just a hurtful word. It is a dangerous label. It is an act of aggression against the trans community. It is made to incite fear against the trans community. And when people are afraid, they can react in really hateful, harmful, and violent ways. And using that word to describe anybody in the LGBTQ community, or any parent of a trans person, or anybody who supports trans people or LGBTQ people, it incites violence against all of them and all of us. That it's a really, really, really serious that has no place in talking about the rights and dignity of trans folks and the LGBTQ community.
Right. I was, when pulling some of the stats, it was Let me see.
Alyssa on TikTok just asked, what label we're talking about. Alyssa, we're specifically talking about the label groomer. That how many
Right.
LGBTQ people, and especially trans people, and even parents of trans people or those who support them, are being called groomers. We're going to talk about why that's patently false. We're going to talk about why that's demonstrably false, and the harms that it does to that community.
Right. And one of the biggest things, when we talk about language rhetoric that people use, right?
Right.
And within this, and so let me just the main thing that are up here just on the actual term. So the trans grooming myth is a harmful narrative that to stoke fear and discrimination, and I hope you can still hear me, against the transgender community. This myth falsely suggests people discussing trans, or actually suggests that trans people or people discussing trans issues are attempting to groom or influence other people, or especially children, to become trans. This narrative is rooted in past anti gay movements and is tied to a history of long-standing false claims that gay, lesbian, bisexual, trans people, and men in particular molest children, or that they do it, but when we know that men are the ones that are at far greater rates of harming children than anyone within the LGBT community. And so that's part of why we wanted to speak to this, because just because you're talking about a trans issue does not mean that you're grooming.
Right.
And that is one thing that, honestly, when you talk about groomer and you talk about some of the places that you hear this terminology are from some of our more extreme politicians.
Sure.
And they don't even understand what that term means, because to them, just discussing trans issues is grooming.
Absolutely.
And it's not.
Donna on here on TikTok said, by clergy or other religious people, it's more, it seems to me to be more of a problem in certain religious communities that are Abrahamic based, because when you see other religious communities, because they do exist, that are not the Abrahamic religions, they are much more, accepting, much more, it's kind of a European thing for us even to think along the binary. And I think a lot of that came with those Abrahamic religions, rather than so many other cultures and religions that already acknowledge, accept, and celebrate gender diversity, gender nonconformance. A lot of them, I think, are even a little bit confused about why we are so binary. So, and happy Mother's Day to you. Thank you. Yeah. Okay, so Amber
Wow.
is having. Oh, we're back.
Ooh.
Ella, she has a little bit of internet trouble, so hang in there. Don't
Yeah.
worry.
I turned the banner. I turned the banner off. I don't know if that's what was causing it. So, because even
Sure.
the ticker, I noticed earlier the ticker, we've got the moving background. I may have to rethink moving
That
background.
might be like
It
giving it
just
a
it,
little
it
bit of
may be
credit.
too much. Like,
Okay. Well, that's easy enough to fix.
wow, right? You know what? Maybe we'll just do that right now so that we don't keep blooping here.
Yeah. While we do
Uh,
that, I will tell a story. It is Mother's Day. Happy Mother's Day to all who celebrate. If you don't have a good relationship with your mom, if you, for whatever reason, if you don't have a mama, we do our best to stand in the gap. We're not going to do that whole I'm your mom now, because I can't possibly do that. But we are always here to stand in the gap. We want to offer mom love, mom support, and to all who are here and watching, and to those who aren't. But I'm away at Mother's Day today with my family. I have a very conservative family. And I mean, once again, somebody's always got to say it. Oh yeah, I love your son. He's fine. He's great. I just hate how much it's being thrown in our faces. And it's more of that harmful rhetoric, because if anything, cisgender normativity, I hope that's the right word, has been literally shoved down my kid's throat since the day he was born, and he still turned out trans. And this whole idea of like, well, I don't mind, but she even said, bless her heart, it's my mother-in-law and I do love her, but she said, well, I don't want to turn on a show and see anyone kissing or having sex relations, even whether it's a gay or straight person. Well, yeah, but you're not posting about you're tired of seeing straight sex on TV. You're not writing your congressman about all the straight sex you see on TV. You don't have a problem with it until it's gay or trans people or non-binary people. That's when you have an issue with it. I get it. I'm uncomfortable whenever I'm watching movies and it's just a really like gnarly intimate scene. I don't know. I just don't like it. Yes, we can, Alyssa. Give me a second. But, nobody, it's not a problem for any of those people. We've had it on TV for years. We've had it on billboards and advertisements and everywhere, and nobody has said anything. As soon as it's a gay or a trans person, then it's being shoved down your throats. Okay, no. Yeah, we are going to give some examples of grooming, Alyssa just asked, and we're going to talk about that.
Oh yeah. And Charles put up here, I worry that Americans hate each other, that no one is safe, and that America is tearing itself apart. That's not all Americans. I get the fear, but that's not all Americans, and I won't lump everybody in that box, because the second I do that, then we're all the same.
But I
and I'm not.
His point and his concern is that we've become so divided. And I understand, I definitely stay on one side, I lean to one side. That's just where I'm at. But it's not just the divisions. It seems like there's just no compromise or collectivity or collaboration over thoughts and ideas. It's just becoming this, I'm right, you're wrong. And don't get me wrong, I think I'm right. But I really do understand where he's coming from. It's hard to watch. I was taught when I was in school, oh, you put your hand over your heart and you say the Pledge of Allegiance. And it didn't occur to me that that was weird. It didn't occur to me that other countries don't display their flag like on their underwear. It didn't occur to me that we were a little bit, nationalistic. And I grew up with some pride in this country. My dad's a veteran. My husband's a veteran. And so I grew up with all this pride and all this people died for this and cool. Like I loved that. And now to try to reconcile it with the way that this country is behaving, towards others and towards itself, it is super deconstructive and it's very sad to watch. And it's very hard to come to terms with this idea that you grew up with, which was that we are the greatest country on the earth. Right. You'll listen go, I'm not sure we are. And, it's hard to reconcile.
I would definitely say I don't feel like we are. So okay, let's just kind of go into some of this. Power of truth. The hard-hitting stats and facts challenge and debunk misinformation about trans individuals. According to the Pew Research Center, 1.6% of U.S. adults identify as trans or non-binary. This includes people who describe themselves as a man, a woman, or non-binary who use terms such as gender fluid or agender to describe their gender. Furthermore, a rising share of Americans say they know someone who is trans. More than 4 in 10, 44%, say they personally know someone who is trans, and 20% know someone who is non-binary. So if you've got that many going on,
yeah,
and there really was grooming going on, you would have cases.
Right.
We'll pick that point up. So I'm just going to insert that there, that if it was happening, you would have cases, you would have precedent, you would have charges, you would have convictions.
Absolutely.
Right? Real threats. When it comes to SA, the actual stats provide a reality check on misplaced fears. Perpetrators of grape are often serial criminals. Out of every 1,000 suspected grape perpetrators referred to prosecutors, 370 or more have been charged before. After conducting a thorough search, there is no documented legal cases where parents were ever convicted of grooming their children into becoming trans.
Right.
That's one stat for you. And in fact, there's a case in Indiana where parents actually sued the state of Indiana, and they tried to go to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court said, nope, not hearing it, because they were trying to, they wanted It was supposedly said over the fact that the child they wanted to put their child in conversion therapy, and supposedly it came down to the child actually had an eating disorder, which was because her parents wouldn't accept her. And so the judge said it's a moot point. The child's 16, they get to make the choice themselves, and removed the child from the parents and wouldn't let the child go back. Um, that's more the case you need to worry about.
Absolutely.
And we're going to go, and yeah, we're going to go into that in a second, because that is an alternative that a lot of people want to say that they need to try for their kids.
Yeah.
We'll give you some stats on why that is horrifically wrong.
I want to say hello to Shelly, who's joining me on TikTok. She said her child is non-binary, and that's why we're here, Shelly. We want to be a place where parents like us can get together, just have community, and hopefully come up with some kind of solutions or measurable actions. But mostly, we believe that by talking about it honestly, openly, and with love and compassion and support, that we can make a difference just in that way. Hi, Amy. Welcome.
Right. That's the biggest point of it. So, conversion therapy, since we brought up the Indiana case, is also known as reparative therapy or sexual or change efforts, and a range of dangerous and discredited practices that falsely claim to change a person's sexual orientation or gender identity or expression. These practices have been rejected by every mainstream medical and mental health organization for decades. Now, first of all, I want you to think about that, for decades. So this new rash of trans people that suddenly exploded in the last 4 years, 6 years, well, if the doctors have known about it, all the specialists have known about it and made this statement for decades, how is that possible?
Gee, it's like they've been here the whole time. I know that,
Right?
I don't know about you, Amber, but I know that for my kid, by the time he came out, I think there was a safety in, because there was kind of that explosion, and especially with the language, that my child had a word
Yes.
for it. And I think that eventually he would have come out. I watched him be happy Mother's Day. That had he just been forced to stay as he was, I think he would have continued to get more miserable, because he was really starting to go through a depression, and we could not figure out what was really going on. He'd already come out as gay. He was, living as a lesbian, and life was great. He was loved and accepted, but he was still miserable. So I think that there are so many times that we have known probably a trans or non-binary person that either didn't have the words for it, didn't feel safe to come out, or was just sitting on a secret because we've instilled so much people. And so, I think that those people, we've all known them, and we've probably just thought of them as being very androgynous. I'm not saying it's aged well, but do you guys remember Saturday Night Live? It's Pat. We've known that they're androgynous or non-binary. I mean, we've known that, but we didn't have a word for it. And we called it we called it cross-dressing. We called it transsexual, which is still a term, please don't get me wrong. But we called it, we had words for it, and just didn't really know what it all meant. We really did think that it was just people who wanted to dress as something different, or who thought they were something that they weren't. And, there's been plenty of media that's kind of poked fun at it, but also accepted it in a way. There's plenty of Victor Victoria. Who doesn't remember that movie with Julie Andrews? Of course, I might have some young people on here who don't. But there have been plenty of examples. I mean, Tootsie, I realized that the guy was cross-dressing in order to get to, I get it. But we've always known that that's here, and seen that. And we've known the man that's been very effeminate, and we've known the woman that's been very masculine. And what we think of as an explosion nowadays really is just having the words for it, having the safety to come out, having the support to come out.
Having the acceptance. I mean, we just haven't been in a place where I feel like, as a whole, just looking at how long it took the anti-gay movement to begin to die down a little bit. And honestly, because they can't get the rage fest out of that movement anymore, is the reason why we've now moved into the trans fest. We've
Absolutely.
gone from anti-gay movements into anti-trans movements because they can't get the same rage factor that they used to. So it's like, ooh, we got to find a new pawn.
Yeah.
And that's
And
what it
it'll be
is.
somebody else. It's going to take a long time for this to calm down. It just is. We already saw it with the gay rights movement. This is going to take a while. This is not going to happen overnight. We're not going to make a few videos and suddenly the whole world's going to love, accept, and affirm trans people. It's going to take the time, and I wish it wasn't so, but it is. But it's going to be someone else after that. It's already coming for, somebody mentioned it earlier on here on TikTok. Oh, well, what about people who think they're animals? The furry community, I used to think it was a little goofy too. I didn't understand it. And I was like, okay, now we're going over into species. Come on. I've learned so much about the furry community. So before you come for the furry community, actually speak to a furry, learn about it, speak to the parent of a furry. It is not people who literally think they're animals. It's people who connect with, identify with, feel like. I mean, my kid used to put on a cat face and dress as a cat. It is a chance to cosplay and find community. It's going to be someone. They're going to come after someone. And a whole poem that we're all very familiar with that was written on the walls of, I believe it might have been Auschwitz, that was said,
Mm-hmm.
they came for this person. And I didn't speak up because I wasn't that. And then they came for this person. They are going to keep coming for somebody. And right now, our best bet is to stand against anything that denies people their autonomy.
Yep.
If you can just take that stance, that's a great blanket. You're going to cover so many things to say, I stand against anything that denies a human being their autonomy.
That's it. I mean, that's 1,000% it. Because that's the main piece that's happening, I feel like, to the non-binary, the transgender community, is that they're just removing all their autonomy. You're removing their voice. You're removing their decisions to make about their health care, about their own bodies, about how they represent, where they can go to the bathroom. Like, I mean, seriously, it's interference at every single level for something that we discussed last week in the show that represents less than 2% of our population.
Right. And the people who
Right?
are in danger are them. It's not us. You and I are
No.
not in danger from this rhetoric. They are in danger, actual physical danger. Oof.
Um,
Let's talk
let's
more.
Yeah, okay. So we're going to look at the okay, so everybody wants to talk about conversion therapy. So we're going to talk about what the actual known harmful effects are. So conversion therapy can lead to depression, anxiety, drug use, homelessness, and suicide. Those are already before conversion therapy, those are already the highest stats for adolescent transgender youth.
Wow.
They already are the highest at depression, highest at mental health, highest at drug abuse or substance abuse, highest at homelessness, suicidal ideation,
Right.
and attempting it. And then you add conversion therapy? Like, guys, like, this is not a mental health fix. It's a mental health nightmare.
Absolutely. And
They are,
issues there that need to be handled with grace and compassion and help, for sure. I think I would be depressed if the world just hated me for who I am. Who wouldn't be?
58% have attempted suicide.
That's insane to me.
Exposure efforts, conversion efforts before the age of 10
Ugh.
led to increased suicidal ideation, increased lifetime cigarette use, and increased lifetime illicit drug use. God, but before the age of 10, let your kid play.
What are you talking about before the age of 10? At
That,
the age of 10, we already learned from Dr. Diana, lots of little kids under the age of 10 will kind of gender bend, right? They'll kind of play. You'll see plenty of like little boys who will twirl in dresses. You've seen a lot of great content where dads are coming out to be supportive of that. And it does not mean they are trans. It doesn't mean they're trans. So when you are reactive in that moment, when your child is just maybe expressing or exploring or just trying to have fun, you're doing so much more harm. That kid probably wasn't even going to grow up to be trans. That kid was probably just trying to play and be expressive.
forcing trans youth into conversion therapy raises their risk of suicide by 55%.
God dang.
And their risk of running away by 128.
Oh, that's
128%. So in other words, you're guaranteed that if you
right.
try conversion therapy on your kid, they're going to run away.
And
Which I'll be honest, I would. Like,
wouldn't you?
peace out, I'm gone. Go away.
The optimal word here is away. They are not running towards something. They are running away from you. And what is that? Is that why we became parents? Was
Mm,
to make our children feel so unsafe with us, they had to escape us? That is not why I became a mother. That's not why I became a
no,
mother.
no. Okay, so approximately 13.5% of trans individuals report lifetime exposure to gender identity conversion efforts. Lifetime, 13.5%. Their families consistently
Silly.
push, push, push for conversion. Conversion therapy is still considered legal in 29 states and 4 territories in the US. And a study analyzing the relationships between conversion therapy and mental health and well being of trans youth in the US, results indicate exposure to conversion therapy substantially increases the likelihood a trans adolescent will attempt suicide and run away. So, not just one, but both. And that's the outcome that you're putting on, that you're placing on your kid who's just trying to figure out who they are. That's
Right.
it. And not in a way to hurt you as a parent, right? Or to hurt society. They're
Right.
just trying to figure out how to exist in their bodies.
Are. Right. And we can be so supportive in other ways when our kids are just trying to figure out who they are at college or, I don't know. It's just heartbreaking.
It is. I just really thought that we had moved away from conversion therapy. Like, I thought the anti-gay movement, like, I thought we had figured that out already a decade and a half, 2 decades ago. This doesn't work. We're not going to do this. This is horrifically wrong.
Do you know how many states, Amber, that it's still legal in? Because I know it's been banned
29.
29.
29.
That's over half the 50 United States. So no, we're not past it. And I believe if there was a federal or national, whatever, ban on conversion therapy, you would still have it happening. You would just have it happening on the down low with
In
churches.
pockets. Yep.
It probably wouldn't, yeah, you'd still see it 100%.
Yeah, I believe it too.
We've got to continue to educate people on why that's so harmful so that it will naturally fade away. I mean, I agree with the bans as well. Let's absolutely push them underground.
Ban. I
Absolutely.
wish they would do a federal, but I'm like you. Like, you'll still have states trying to bend it wherever they can, and it's horrific. Um, that's one of the reasons why I wanted to bring it up, because it, it's no joke when I make the comment, it's harmful. It's not a little harmful. It's not it's not a fraction harmful. It
Right.
is overwhelmingly destructive to your child or your family member.
Who is going to grow up to be a functioning adult and member of society. And now they are coming to the table with that much more baggage,
Trauma.
that
Trauma.
much more trauma. Thank you, Amber, for putting that correctly. Call it what it is. They're coming to the table with that much more trauma. Y'all, trauma is expensive. If you want to try to put this into terms your fiscally conservative friends can get on board with, trauma is expensive. It leads to more absences at school. It leads to more absences at work. It leads to more need for healthcare coverage, more trips to the emergency room. And if you've got people who are uninsured because they're trans and they can't get hired on in a decent company because they're being discriminated against, that cost falls to all of us when they have to go to an emergency room or be placed in psychiatric hold. Who absorbs that cost when they can't pay? Everybody's worried about that with healthcare, and I get it. But trauma is expensive to everyone. Our economy, our success in local and throughout the nation relies on an educated, healthy, productive workforce. I mean, listen to me just like spout the capitalist agenda here, but it does. And people's general success, Like, I don't want to be unhoused. That's not good for anybody. So it is expensive for us to traumatize people.
Really expensive. And speaking of traumatizing people, so that's one of those not misnomers, but misstatements is that trans people are groomers.
Agreed, Donna. Yeah.
So what I actually did was I went looking for our stats again, right? So let's look at some stats. Are perpetrators of SA crimes, perpetrators of rape, well, actually, we read that one. 93.6% of SA offenders are men. Period. Men perpetrate most SA and those crimes. Sex offenders against children tend to be juveniles or young adults under the age of 30. So again, men, 93.6% of men under the age of 30 are in this, not 93.6%, I just mean of the offenders. Most SA are committed by people who know the victims. Acquaintances are most often the perpetrators, followed by family members, clergy members, and then strangers. Statistically, these stats highlight that the primary perpetrators are often male, have a history of violence. It's important to remember, and let me put this out here, that these are general trends. They don't define every individual within these groups. Each person is unique and should not be judged based on these. We're just, what I want to do is tell you, so, and let me, before we finish that, let me add to this. So after doing thorough research, there is not a single documented legal case where a trans person has been charged and convicted of grooming a child. Zero. There are zero drag queens.
Amen.
So when people try and tell you that they're grooming, I want you to tell them to go out and find you the cases. Find the convictions.
Do a little better than that, because we can all find one of some random thing. Find more than one, because you can pull up pages upon pages upon pages of examples from other types of people. So ask them to find 10. I mean, it doesn't count if you find one. Come on. I don't think you can find one, but if you can, ask them
right.
It just, Amber will bring you the numbers. She ain't afraid to bring you the numbers. Tell them.
No. And then I went looking, and actually I went and looked specifically. Okay, so there are no documented legal cases, right, of trans individuals who have been convicted for grooming, for SA, for molestation, for rape of any prepubescent or adolescent children. I looked at every category, guys. Every age group of every category. Zero. Zip. Nada.
Big goose egg.
Yeah. I just,
So let's define our terms, though. What are they saying grooming really means?
Grooming is usually where you're being,
I mean, we all
encouraged. It kind of just, as someone is trying to get your affection of some sort.
Manipulate you in some way into.
Right? And usually there is some kind of sexual manipulation involved with it.
Sure.
Of some sort, right? Like, it's not just we want to be friends. There is that component of it.
Right. It's typically a slower process.
Right.
You're kind of implanting or putting ideas in someone's head about who you are or what your intentions are or what they should be, in order to gain
Think about your online blogs, your online chat rooms. That, remember 20 years ago when the internet blew up, we all said you got to be really careful about your kids being on the internet because of the people behind the keyboards trying to manipulate your children. That's a groomer. That's a groomer.
Right.
Not me, not Jenny, because we support our kid.
And
Not
it's,
other
but it's
parents
strange,
because they
right?
support their kids.
I don't even understand how the word would apply to loving and supporting my kid, because I certainly didn't implant the idea in his head that, he was different, that he was trans. I certainly didn't, ask him, oh, don't you want to be trans? Like, wouldn't that be a great thing? Or, yeah, I mean, it doesn't even make sense, because the end result for grooming is really for the groomer to gain something from it. And it's usually sexual, but in my case, what did I gain by that? I mean, I definitely, what would I have gained by trying to convince my son to be that way, or trying to shape him?
Right?
There
I
was
mean,
nothing.
I was targeted as a kid, and I can tell you that was grooming.
Yeah.
At my church, there was a lot of manipulation, and there was a lot of grooming there too. Um, there's grooming in a lot of places that you don't expect to see it until you pull back far enough and go, "Oh wow,
Wow. Yeah.
that really lured me in,"
Yeah.
without you realizing it. Um, and just being somebody who's gone through these things, I can just it's absurd to me, the rhetoric that they're using, that they're trying to put this on trans people, or to say that teachers are grooming kids into trans people. None of that's going on. Like again, that's another one of those myths about grooming. Teachers aren't grooming. Your school's not grooming. A book isn't grooming your kid.
I had a gal one day leave a comment on something that I put, and she said, well, my friend's daughter, who's a lesbian, went to the school counselor, and the school counselor was trying to make her be a trans boy and transition. And I'm like, okay, well, either you're a liar, your friend is a liar, or your friend's child is a liar, because I don't believe that for one solitary second. That is absolutely not happening anywhere, anyway. It's entirely
Nope.
possible that that child was telling the counselor things that made that counselor go, have you considered you might be? But that is nothing in the way of you should be, here's what you should do. None of that. So, we've got to shoot down BS when we hear it too. We've got to get comfortable saying, I don't believe that. That's a lie. That's
Right?
wrong.
And then I think that's the bigger thing with when we talk about people and the support of the trans community outside of Jenny and I, outside of their parents, right? When you're talking about your trans siblings out in the community and your friends and your coworkers, this is why we say you need to correct other people, because so many people are walking around with this falsehood in their mouths, in their brains, and they're spitting that out to everybody they meet. So when they've spit it out to you, go, no, give me your proof.
Shut that down. Give me your proof.
Like
Absolutely.
seriously, like that's how we start kind of removing some of this, excuse my French, batshit crazy that's been going on.
Yeah. Because there are plenty of people who they will say that to you, and those people will instantly jump on board and go, oh my God, I believe that. Like litter boxes in classrooms and bathrooms. Give me a
Oh
break.
my gosh. Oh
Yeah, I
my
mean,
gosh.
so many people believe it because they want to believe it. They want somebody to be mad at. They want somebody to hate. They want to believe that things are completely bonkers in that way, because it's a confirmation bias, and it gives them more reason to hate. But it's so dangerous. We've had librarians in the state of Oklahoma who received schools that received BOMB threats. I don't always know what I can say on TikTok, so
Right?
that they have received those threats against their schools because these teachers were making TikToks. And one of them said, my agenda is to get hands in the books of children and teach them love, acceptance, and empathy. And that person received a kaboom threat to their school. That person received threats to their person.
To
It is
teach compassion.
dangerous. It is dangerous. And if you think people out there won't do it, you've lost your entire mind. People are
Right?
absolutely doing it now.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so I started to write a book. I don't think we've actually talked about this on this show. So I started to write a book last year, last April, May, about a kind of a guide for parents who are struggling to accept their trans children. And it just rolled out. I kind of had a publisher who was kind of in my ear, new in my circle, who was like, you could do it. And she just had heard me talk a lot about it. And she was like, you've got a lot of passion. I really think you could do this. And so within about 2 days, I've cranked out like 3/4 of a book. Then the next day, an entire workbook. And then within a week, she sends me a video that's about trans propaganda. And she tells me, well, if you're going to be an expert to speak about trans rights, as a trans advocate, as a parent, you got to speak to this as well. That you are a groomer and you sexualized your child.
I love you, Gwenny. What?
Yes. And I just kind of was like, you were my publisher for this damn book. Are you serious? And like, I never wrote to her again, never responded. Honestly,
Yeah.
it's kind of what kind of sucked the wind out of the sails of finishing the book last year. Was I was so like just
Right.
no, what? But that
Right.
was my publisher who had already published, and I'm not going to say who it is, but she's already published a trans author, actually it's a doctor on how to treat patients in post-op. And I was like, I wonder if she ever gave you any of that anti-trans rhetoric that she gave me. But she was a professional, not a parent.
Do you think she grew or learned something different?
No, because she was telling me all kinds of crap. Like, I mean, honestly, like she had already said a couple of things that I just kind of was like,
yeah,
I know where you're located. I know the misinformation you're hearing, but like in 1,000 years, it wouldn't matter because anthropologists were going to be able to tell the difference if you were non-binary or trans by your skeleton. Oh, and get this. This was why. Because women had one less set of ribs than men. So we already know. They aren't rated on their sexual. You don't look at a corpse by their pelvis. You look at them by their rib cage. And I'm going, I've taken the anatomy classes. Are you kidding me?
What does that even?
This is simple knowledge you can go look up. But that was like just little pieces she kept dropping like that.
Men have fewer ribs? I thought we came from those.
No. That was the deal. Was we had one less because they took the rib away, so we could only have what he had left.
Oh my God! Stop it!
And I was just like, I can't. And so I just left that one alone. She's older than me. I know where she's located. And I'm in the South, so I know the rhetoric, right? I know the brainwashing there. And so I just kind of was like, okay. But when she sent in the video about, and the thing about I was a groomer to my own child, I was just like, oh, no, we're done. We're done here. I'm finished.
How is...
And walked away.
There's nothing sexualizing about... First of all, there's nothing... All right, for sexuality doesn't, first of all, is not this awful, dirty, ugly thing. Sexualizing, sure, but there's no line drawn between connecting between accepting and loving your trans child and sexualizing them. We're talking about, I don't get it. My son being trans has nothing to do with his sexuality whatsoever.
For some reason, that is like that's the thing in their head. I mean, it was like the Pizzagate, right? It was like Pizzagate. And it's again that...
These same parents are the ones who'll put like little lady killer on their baby boy's onesie, or like, the little girls ones. They're like, my daddy's going to have a shotgun. Like, who is sexualizing their children?
Right.
It's not me.
We were really flexible with our kids. We just kind of let our kids figure that out because, like, that's what kids do. In development, sorry, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but they do begin to make choice decisions for themselves and figure out how they express. Like,
right.
It's insane. Now, I did find, so here's my last little bit of stats. According to experts on education, SA, and DV, and Law enforcement. Allowing individuals to access bathrooms that match their own gender identity does not increase the risk of child SA. Overwhelmingly, SA happens with people children know and trust. Family, friends, relatives, older children, siblings, and even youth and faith leaders. In fact, trans people are 4 times more likely to be the victims of abuse in SA than their perpetrators.
Absolutely.
It's like,
Ask any trans person about the fetishization of their trans community, and they will tell you. They will
Byron, that's
you.
it. It's not rational for them to speak otherwise. They have to leave their cult, and they refuse to do that. That is exactly it. It's like, this is my hill, and I'm going to die on it. Like, I'm going to stand on this statement no matter how much proof you give me.
You can show them all the evidence for neurobiology. You can show them all the evidence for, different cultures and plenty of places all over the world that have long since affirmed and accepted and understood and even revered their gender diverse population. And you can show them all that. And it just still comes down to, it really is that deeply, I think it's that kind of deeply held belief that is primarily, I would say, vast majority is religious based.
Right. And hate is hate.
Yeah.
I mean, and if you teach your children that hate, if we don't accept trans people, we don't accept non-binary, and you can't figure out why your kid is now, I don't know, arrested for assaulting someone in a bathroom, you taught it to them.
Everywhere because that person took their own life, and you wonder why your child's being targeted. What did you teach your child? What did you teach them?
Right.
I caught mad heck for, posting the video where I said, to the parents of the people who potentially contributed to the death of Nex. People were like, oh, and now don't you feel stupid now that that Nex did this? No, I don't feel stupid.
No.
If you are bullying,
I felt like he had no choice.
Knowing what we know about bullying, knowing that plenty of cisgender straight kids have ended their own lives as a result of bullying.
Attempted.
We know that's a problem. And we've been speaking that. So yeah, I am going to come for you. What are you teaching at home? Because I will tell you right now, you won't hear that out of my children, because I've taught since the day we started talking about anything that there's a way to treat people and that we're loving and accepting and affirming of everyone, because we're just not going to be those people. That's our character. So, I'm sorry if you don't teach your children good character at home. That's unfortunate, but your child is going to deal with some consequences for that at some point.
Right. I like this. Byron posted, if you're the one interested in what's in someone else's crotch, you're the pervert. That's by Trevor Noah.
That I would like to real quick get on here on TikTok. Grace, will you please shoot me a message? I would love to talk to you. Amber and I might like to have you on the podcast, please. So shoot me a message if you don't mind.
Sweet.
Grace is a gender/life coach.
Oh, sweet.
Really cool.
Right? I feel like actually just one of them, there's a new one that just started coming to Mama Bear. She actually may have found us through this first. I'm not sure, but she just connected with me in the last week or so on LinkedIn as well. And she does the same thing. She actually, I think, works with the LGBTQ and helping them get jobs because she just understands that it's such a hard thing. She works with that group in particular to make sure that they have fine work, because she just knows that they're discriminated against.
Work, I'm sure. Work with places that are going to be welcoming, affirming, and
Right?
It's so weird to even say those words. Do you know what I mean? When I sit here and say, like, oh, we need to be welcoming and loving and affirming and accepting, it's so bizarre to even say it.
I wish we didn't have to say it.
We do, because the opposite exists. But for the most part, like, why are we even using these words to talk about treating human beings like human beings? Why do we have to make it sound all mushy and Hallmark card?
Right?
This is treating human beings like human beings. And
my friend made a comment off of our show, and I didn't, and I thought about it later. So we did the show, acceptance versus awareness, right? Where we need to shift. And she came on Mama Bear, I feel like that week, the next week, the following, and we were kind of talking about that conversation. She's like, well, shouldn't it really be more like embracing
Yeah.
versus just accepting? And I was like, all right, well, now I gotta make another episode because you just shot me in the foot on that one because I thought we were doing good to move from the awareness to the acceptance.
Well,
Dang it.
next we go from acceptance to embracing because it is a process.
It
Um,
is that, unfortunately. I mean, that's what happens with parents,
right.
moving them from one side, from going, I don't accept my kid, to get them to fully accept their kid. It is a step program. You're not going to go from I'm fully against this to I'm fully for this overnight. It just
I wanted to tell you, Amber, something that meant something to me. We used to kind of partner with another gal, a doctor, it doesn't matter who she is, who she would coach and she would work with parents of trans and non-binary people. And she would say, I absolutely will not work with you if you don't want to if you don't want to love and accept your child, I don't want to work with you. And I love that you keep your space, your heart, your mind open to, hey, I'm willing to work with people who aren't there and who, maybe at the time go, no, I don't want to accept it. I want to fix it, or I want to this it and I want to that it. Because that is so necessary. If we completely close off and go, well, I'm only catering to one kind of person, we're leaving out the people that need it the most.
right. I think this goes back to our second show where we were talking about the comments made in the very first show about how do you move intolerance, right? If you respond to intolerance with more intolerance, we don't move the trans agenda. We don't move the trans mission that for more inclusivity, for embracing them. We leave people actually where they're stuck at. In fact, if anything, we may solidify that place for them, or we may push them even further back than they were before.
Yeah.
And so, because a friend of mine was just kind of like, I had the person that made those comments in the show had been a very close connection of mine. And I was very just shocked that they had said that because they had worked for the trans person for 4 or 5 months, co-hosting a show like you and I do. And I felt like for them to say as much as they did, I just couldn't allow them in my space anymore, right? I didn't feel like it made people who came to the show, who came to my rooms, who might want to discuss their children, feel safe.
Right.
And I had another connection who was like, I can't believe you blocked that person. And I was like, I didn't block them. I disconnected from them. And I didn't block them because I want them to come back. I want them to come back and watch my videos. I want them to learn.
Right.
But I accept that they aren't in that place right now. And I can't waste time with somebody who honestly is not ready to move yet. Let me work with the people who are questioning, right? Because if they're questioning, you're at least open. You're curious. We can talk to you. We can start going, okay, but what is your fear? What is it that you're hung up on? What is it? What is the dynamic here that's getting you lost? Why can't you see your kid? Whatever it is, we'll break it apart and
Right.
figure that out. But I know that there are some parents who are absolutely, no, I am here and I'm not moving and I can't do anything with those people. And honestly, those people aren't going to seek me out.
But once you've expressed that and once you've made it known and once you've made yourself available, they know where to go.
Right?
I
Right?
had somebody reach out to me not too long ago, and it was their turn. It was somebody in their family. And they reached out to me because they knew, and they knew I was vocal about it. And they knew, that we have a great relationship and my son is doing very, very well. So
Right?
just sometimes it's not even keeping the door open. Sometimes it's just keeping the light on.
Right? Right? I mean, it's okay to say that this isn't safe to stay right here up close, but you
Right.
could still stay on the periphery and look in if you want to. And hopefully with curiosity, again, you will, so that you start seeing, oh, wait a minute, that was my misconception, not a lie, right? Not that you were lied to, you just had a misconception of what the truth was. And now you've learned. I mean, we all learn at different paces, and you can't force education You can't. Like, if you don't want to learn it, you're not going to learn it.
Yeah.
But hopefully, yeah, with time, like leaving that door open so that, and even if you do get to where you're like feisty, like I still, again, it's, why are you feisty?
Yeah.
Like, why are you reacting? Like, what is making you so reactive here? Like, let's get to the bottom of that, because there's something that's triggering
What is
you.
bothering you so much? I've got a fellow on TikTok right now. I'm going to go ahead and address it because who cares? Saying, that you should be able to get hormones or surgery until you're 21, that he doesn't care. They can get a haircut, wear whatever they want, act however they want, but he objects to any medical intervention. Well, sir, my daughter, who's cisgender at 18, can do anything she wants to her. Well, just kidding. She can go get gender affirming care. If her breasts were very, very small and that made her not feel woman enough or feminine enough, she can go get breast implants. She can do that for herself at 18 years old. At 12 years old, she could get on birth control. Did she? Absolutely not. But she could have. Asked me how I know. And those are hormones. And it's perfectly fine for her to do that, despite the fact that we know that they cause things like massive, horrible side effects, certain cancers. She's allowed to do that. She's allowed to do that to her body because she's cisgender. But you're telling me that an 18-year-old who in this country can go fight and die for their country, can buy, I don't think they can buy cigarettes anymore. I do think they have to be 21.
Nope. Nope.
But they can go die for their country. He can go buy a gun.
Thank you.
He can't do whatever he wants with his own body, knowing who he is. And Donna, who spoke up and said it is a long process. It is a long process. Kids aren't mutilating themselves. They are not having surgery as minors. It's not happening. You do have minors who will get breast reduction because it's bad for their back, or it's embarrassing or horrific, or you want to talk about other minors? Let's talk about babies. And they can just snip the parts of their peepees off. That's not mutilation. We do that openly. We support it. We even make up lies about how it's cleaner in order to do this country. So I'm not trying to hear that noise. I realize that your argument was probably in bad faith. I do appreciate that at least you give respect to transgender adults with what they do to their body. But you're an adult at 18 in this country. And nobody, and I mean nobody, is taking their child to get their genitals changed or mutilated, except for the circumcision I talked about when they are minors. That is not happening. You are misinformed. You don't know, and that makes you ignorant. And there's nothing wrong with ignorance, because ignorance is curable. It is curable with education. And that's part of what Amber and I do. You are being lied to. You are reading stuff that is untrue and inflated. And you are not talking to people like Amber and me, who have worked with countless parents, and zero of them have taken their child under 18 in for any kind of surgery. Zero of them have put their child on hormones. Hormone blockers are another issue. By the way, I was on hormone blockers. There's lots of reasons that non-trans kids get on hormone blockers, and it's just fine for them to do it, but not my kid. Just fine for them to do it. So hang on to that and consider that. Break down why you're believing the things you've been told. Consider joining us every Sunday to learn more, because we are here to dispel the kind of myths that you are eating up, because it's so dangerous to our children. It is so dangerous to our children. It is life-threatening to our kids, to the trans community. By the way, my kid is an adult, and so is Amber's. It is so dangerous to the trans community for that rhetoric to continue.
It's obscene for that rhetoric to continue. Hormones, like I was on birth control at 12 because of heavy periods. I had a breast reduction 1 month after I was 18 years old because I had been in a car accident, and they were hoping to relieve the nerve damage in my left shoulder by that surgery. But you think my son should have to wait to be 21 to do something with his. Now, he can go over to another country and be killed.
Well, and he stated he thinks guns and military should also be 21. That's great, but they're not.
They're not.
And furthermore,
and neither is voting. And the reason why you keep pushing shit out is because you think that you need to control the masses. And I'm sorry, but if we can vote at 18, we can fight for a country and buy a gun at 18, then back up the alcohol and the drugs. I'm sorry.
Back it up. I mean, you're trying to exert what you believe is right for someone, what you believe gender or sex are. You're trying to say, well, my opinion on that is correct. You don't know a person as well as they know themselves. And so in doing that, you're denying them, again, their autonomy. Trans people don't wake up one day and go, you know what? I think I'm a woman. I'm going to go chop my wee-wee off and wear dresses and call me Susie. That's just not what happens. It is a process. It is almost always created in, I don't know, deactivated inactivity to your current life. I don't know. Oh, uh-oh. Hold on, I got to scoot this thing over. It's just this very predominant idea that we know what's right for somebody else. And, it's a process. Most of these kids are in therapy long before. I mean, my kid was in therapy for a year before he even came out.
Really?
Yeah, he did therapy for a whole year. We couldn't figure out what was going on. He had some serious depression issues and he was in therapy. And it turns out he was depressed because everybody was calling him a girl. And, that's okay. He's better now. Life is great.
Sorry, I had to add that one. This is my quote, and I've said this before. I tell this to people. Your opinions never replaces our son's facts.
Right.
Who they are is a fact. And whatever you believe, great. It has nothing to do with my kid.
The more you understand that this is neurobiological, it is something they absolutely 100% were born with, cannot control. It is there. There's a mountain of evidence out there. Once you understand that and you stop taking it as people just coming up with fluke ideas and you understand, wait a second, this is just a variation of the human brain, body. This is just a variance.
Yep.
We accept that people have ADHD. We accept that people have autism. We accept all types of variants, but this is the one we can't get over. And we've got to ask ourselves, why?
Why
is this one the one I can't get over? I can accept so many other things. Why can't I get over this? Ask yourself that. What about it does it offend inside of you to think that? I think it's a question worth asking. Why does this bother me so much?
I think another thing, for the person who commented on your TikTok, that comment, I'll just say this. One of the other things I tend to get pushback on is why is it not okay to ask somebody their gender identity, right? A lot of cis people feel like they have the ability that they should be able to walk up to my kid and go, what are you? Who are you? But let me tell you something. I have never walked up to a cisgender person in my entire life and said, what is your favorite sexual position? Because that's how private that information is.
What? Show me your what's in your pants? Like what? Don't worry. Just don't worry. I don't even care. I meet you. You're a person. You tell me your name is Susie. Hi, Susie. Pleasure to meet you. You don't need to tell me your pronouns. I don't care. I care if you care, if you want me to know. But overall, I don't. You just told me your name is Susie. Moving on.
Right.
It's just that simple.
I just, yeah. It's. And I didn't. You were brave. Well, you did family stuff because you sent me that message, and I was like, see. I stayed home today. I stayed home and I didn't have to deal with the grandma or the uncles and the aunts and the cousins and the discrimination and the bias and the rhetoric and the honest to God bullshit.
Caterpillar, cow, frog. I don't have all the parts I was born with. And I'm still whole and complete and wonderful, but thank you.
Right. But yeah, so when you said that, I was like, I'm so good. I covered my bases.
I think babies should be able to keep their foreskin. So I agree with you there. You're right. They should.
Well, I mean, we don't ask. They're babies. So we're not asking. That's another.
Really cut the most sensitive part of your penis off and say it's for cleanliness. I mean, can I just cut your genitals? We don't do that. As far as the sports issue, we would love to address it again. We actually have addressed that in a previous one. It really comes down to there are absolutely zero cisgender men who I guess are failing so poorly in sports that they decide they need to win a trophy somewhere. So they
Nope.
chop off their weenies and take estrogen and join women's sports. That's not happening. That's not a thing. By the time most trans women do participate in sports, estrogen has fully taken over. There's no more testosterone left. And so they are at the same physiological advantage as far as hormonal. Everybody thinks, oh my God, testosterone just makes you this. There are women who can beat cis men in plenty of sports all the time. And sometimes, that's just how it is. But no cisgender men are doing that. These are trans women and they would like to participate in sport too. They make up 1% of the population, maybe 1 to 2% of the population. And even if you take 1 to 2% of the population, not 100% of that 1 to 2% is even playing sports. So it's an even more minuscule percentage of the entire population, let alone the trans population, who are actually playing in sport. And I think that they should be able to do that and be affirmed and be treated correctly. There's a mountain of evidence that shows that there is no physiological disadvantage because all that testosterone is gone and out of their bodies. And what it's resulting in is further harm. You're either getting cisgender athletes who are being asked to prove their genitals. And it is because and there are cis women like myself who already overproduce what we would consider male hormones. I overproduce androgens. Does that put me at an advantage? Should I not be able to play sports because I have more male hormones in me than the typical cisgender woman? Are we going to check everybody's hormones now? It's silly. It's not. It's just it's such a small number. But they pick that one transgender athlete and they focus on her as if there's not thousands of other athletes. But they're going to pick that one transgender athlete and they're going to make a big deal out of it. They're going to shove it in your face and they're going to keep feeding it to you. And you're going to go, yeah, that's wrong. That hurts women in sports. Instead of going, that's one athlete. It's one. Is this a threat? And is this really a threat, or am I buying into something?
That's kind of what those bills have been created off of, is typically one case. In North Carolina, we passed that bill last year that said that trans females cannot participate on female sports in middle school, high school, or collegiate levels in North Carolina, private or public. And I love this piece. Only 2 trans women had applied to play sports in the state in the last 4 years. So when by the time this was passed, these people were already out of school.
2 in the last 4 years in the entire state. When you consider,
and we passed a bill on it.
Sure, they did.
It's obscene.
They absolutely do. Nobody is performing surgery. You missed this earlier. Nobody's performing surgery on minors. That's just not a thing. Amber and I both have worked with countless parents of trans people. We've worked with countless trans people. This is what we do. And that is absolutely not a thing. You're being lied to and you're believing it. And I understand because it is a scary thought. I do not think that children should be just having random life-changing elective surgeries either. But there are times that is appropriate. For example, if a young woman, I had a girlfriend who in high school, her mother bought her a nose job at 16 years old because she had been brutally ridiculed. And nobody objected to that. Nobody objected to her being prettier. But we object to, and hey, I'm with you. Cool. No surgery until 18. Most of us are on board with you. I don't really know any advocates for the trans community that are like, what? No, when they're 12, they should be able to. Nobody's saying that. No. We agree with you. You make a good point. It's great. But what you're basing your comment on lies that you've been told and things that you're hearing and propaganda. And it's just incorrect. And that's why we're here, is to break those things down.
Now, Charles asked I know we're over, guys, but Charles asked a really interesting question. People don't ask about gender. Should people be criticized if they misgender someone? I'm going to tell you right now, first of all, if you misgender someone, typically the best response is, oh, I'm sorry, when they correct you. Address it and move on.
Yeah. If you do it on purpose continuously after you've been corrected, yes, you should be ridiculed.
But otherwise, you're not going to be. And Byron asked, "How do I contact you?" And I told him I will message. I don't. Are y'all not? Are you connected with Byron?
Connect with me, Byron. Shoot me a message. I'm happy to talk to you.
Okay. And if he hasn't, I may intro y'all in DMs on LinkedIn.
I would love
Introduce
that.
you that way. He and Mariah are awesome.
Well, good. Please holler at me. Listen, I am on 3%. We are actually 10 minutes over our hour time. Anyway, please join us again next Sunday. We're going to break down another topic. I don't know what it's going to be, but it's going to be freaking awesome. Thomas, I really don't understand your question. We are mama bears. We support our kids. We are fierce. We are loving. We are thrilled to be here and to hopefully continue to spread love and compassion and support to the trans community and parents and loved ones of trans folks.
Right.
Papa Bear! We got a Papa Bear on TikTok. Hi, Papa Bear!
Yay! Love Papa Bears. We don't see many of those. We just don't see many.
Team Bear.
Right? All right. Well, thank you guys. And yeah, we'll be back next week. I don't know what the thing's going to be, actually. And I should be thinking of this. And I haven't.
It'll be great.
Right. We'll do something. All right, guys. Join us next week. Thank you on TikTok. Thank you on LinkedIn. Thank you on YouTube for everybody who joined us tonight. And we will catch y'all next week. Bye.
See you then, baby.